Hey, what's going on, YouTube? Aura Storm here with another part of the deck profile update for Dimension of Chaos slash OCG cards. A lot of decks that are current decks that are getting support are in some of the future sets like Dimensions of Chaos. Blackwings are another deck that are getting more support. I think most of this is due to the fact that currently in the anime they're in the Synchro Dimension, which means Jack and Crow are currently in the anime. I'm planning on sometime in the future doing maybe at the end of the week doing a quick little anime review for you guys, kind of covering like what's good about Arc 5. I feel like most part I think Arc 5 is pretty good anime, but for now we're going to talk about the couple new Blackwing cards. There are several new ones I believe that Crow has used in the anime. These are the two main ones that I've seen so far that we know we're getting at some point. This first one is Assault Blackwing Kunai the Drizzle. I'm still working with figuring out how to make this card kind of work in the strategy, but I think unless we get the level 9 synchro that Crow uses in the anime, I kind of think that this card isn't going to really do a lot for me at this current point in time. So you can special summon it from your hand by attributing one Blackwing monster you control. Now why is this good? Because you contribute, if you have a Blizzard in your hand, you can special summon this, tribute off your Chris or your Bora, normal summon your Blizzard, and then special summon it back and combo off. So in that respect, I think the card is pretty good, but and it can also target a sync, and when it's special summoned that way, it becomes a tuner monster. So you can target a synchro monster you control and declare a level then between 1 and 8 until the end of the turn. It becomes that level. So basically, special summon, and if you've got another synchro out, so say you have a no thung out, so you can special summon a Drizzle, then change and then you can change No Thung's level to 2, synchro summon for like a Hawkjoe, then bring No Thung back. So in some ways I think this card might have some uses in the deck, but I haven't really tested this card specifically yet. The other one is obviously must play. So this isn't one of the new cards that Crow used in the anime, called Assault Blackwing Rakiri the Sudden Shower. So the first effect is this card was synchro summoned using a Blackwing monster is treated as a tuner, which I'm still kind of like debating what uses that could have. I mean, it's a level 7, so theoretically you could go into Star Eater with this if you really wanted to, but once you read the effect, you probably won't want to. So once per turn, you can target cards your opponent controls up to the number of other Blackwing monsters you control, destroy them. So this is basically sort of like a Ritual Beast Steeds for Blackwings, except it destroys cards and not just monsters. Now it does not count Rakiri, so you can't go into Rakiri and pop a card. You've got to spam the board a bit, which really does fit with Blackwing's playstyle since they just special summon when you control another one. So one aspect I like is at least you're not going to be blowing up 4 or 5 cards of your opponent. Like, it has a slight limitation, and it forces you to have to at least spam the board a little bit more to an extent, which I like that aspect of Rakiri. Rakiri is an incredibly powerful card, I think, for the archetype, and it's basically I still don't think it fills the little niche Blackwings need, which is a card to search a Whirlwind. Nevertheless, it's a pretty decent addition to the archetype. So anyway, with all that out of the way, let's get to the deck profile. Now, I will say I came pretty close. It wasn't this community tournament, but the one back in April. I came close to playing Blackwings, but I ended up changing the last minute. But this is pretty close to the deck list I was going to play at that. But anyway, let's get to deck profiles. First off, 2 copies of Blackwing Blizzard the Far North. This is your Wolfbark. It's also a tuner. You normal summon it. You special summon a Blackwing monster from your graveyard. The effect is not negated though, so Chris will still be able to protect itself if your opponent happens to torrential. You can still use Gale's effect if you bring it back, and etc. It's a pretty good, I wouldn't run it at more than 2. Typically, I don't really need more than 2, and I really never found a problem with it. 2 copies of Blackwing Bora the Spear. Now that Chris exists, I'm kind of iffy on my Bora ratios. A lot of people still say you should run 3, but I don't find the need to run more than 2 at this point. Especially because Chris is probably the better card. Bora does inflict piercing damage, which is pretty nice, but other than that, I still feel like Chris is a better card, which I'll get to Chris. Then 2 copies of Blackwing Gale the Whirlwind. Yes, this card is at 3, but I never find myself needing the 3rd copy. I feel like 2 is kind of the ideal number. Yeah, it did get put to 3 on a few ban lists ago, but you shouldn't really need 3. And 3 copies of Blackwing Chris the Dawn. Much like Bora, you can special summon this card from your hand. You control another Blackwing monster. Now, unlike Bora, it's only once per turn, but the main point of this card is once per turn, it cannot be destroyed by spell or trap effects. So I remember one time when I was playing the deck, I normal summoned my Blizzard and I special summoned my Chris from the graveyard, and he tried to torrential. So I went ahead and chained Lance to Blizzard, and then Chris protects itself. Chris dodges a lot of back row hate, like it can't be when it hits the board, it can't be bottomless, it can't be ringed. There's a lot of stuff it will dodge when it hits the field. So I really like the card, the fact that it's unaffected once per turn by it's doesn't seem good, but once you actually test the card, it is really good. Then 2 copies. This is one of the other new cards. Like Chris was one of the new cards that came out in Premium Gold 2 back in March. Pinaki is the other new card. Basically, the first, it cannot be, you only can make Blackwing synchros with it, but when it's sent to the graveyard, it's like basically a Scarm for Blackwings, which is really nice. Gives them a little bit more searching consistency, which I like. I feel like I shouldn't need more than 2. Same thing with the next, because it kind of works well with the next card. 2 copies of Blackwing Shura the Blue Flame. As much as I like Shura as a card, unfortunately, now that we have Pendulums as a mechanic, Shura will not be getting its effect as often as it used to. And I feel like obviously most of the time my main thing is if I do get Shura's effect off, I bring Pinaki straight out of my deck, inflict some damage, synchro up, and then get my search off in the end phase. Shura is still a pretty key cog in the whole Blackwing strategy, but I feel like you probably shouldn't run more than 2 as long as Pendulums are a mechanic. 3 copies of Blackwing Collude the Moonshadow. This is a Blackwing Honest. Obviously play 3. And especially with a lot of the newer support, it opens up a lot of nasty OTKs. Like, you can easily just drop one of these and just smack your opponent straight for game. It's a really good, obviously really good card. 1 copy of Blackwing Zephyros Elite. Once per turn, you can return 1 face-up card and special summon this card from your graveyard once per duel. But it's typically just another level 4 to kind of fill out the level 4 lineup so I can go into rank 4 plays a little bit easier. 1 copy of Blackwing Orochi the Squall. The main reason you run this card is going to be special summon when you control a Blackwing monster other than itself. I usually summon it. I usually will search it when I go for my Blizzard into No Thung play, because I can go straight into Yugioh. And when it's used as synchro material, it also can change one monster on the field's position so you can, if a monster is set, you can flip it and find out what it is. It will trigger the effect if it's a flip effect, obviously, but if your opponent's got a big monster in attack mode, you can swap it to defense mode. It's a really good card. I really like it. It allows me to go. I feel like you need more than 1, but it's really good. That's all the monster lineup for the spells. 3 copies of Black Whirlwind. Since this card is it's really good because it's your main searching consistency. That's why a lot of Blackwing players like to run Pot of Duality. I'm not the biggest fan of Duality in Blackwings because unless I open with it, it doesn't really do anything. Because typically in Blackwings, if you go first, you're going to set back row, summon a monster, and pass turn. So in that situation, Duality is good. But other than that, like most of the time with Blackwings, you want to be spamming the board, and Duality kind of conflicts with that. So it's one of the reasons I don't run Duality. But Whirlwind is an obvious 3 of, I think, in any Blackwing build. It's your generic searcher. Every time you normal summon a Blackwing monster, it searches one that has less attack than it. So it's really nice. 2 copies of Forbidden Lance, because much like a lot of decks I play, Forbidden Lance this deck is heavily reliant on its normal summon resolving and going through. So Lance is incredibly potent, like making sure your Blizzards go through. If you try to smack through with the Shura and you get hit with back row, you can chain Lance and then drop your Collude. It's really important in a deck like this where you rely on getting your Whirlwind searches. 1 copy of Allure of Darkness. It's an all-dark deck, obviously. 1 copy of Regeki. It's a staple. 2 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon. Even though I do main deck Icarus, 3 Icarus attack, I always would rather have the 2 MSTs than not. That's kind of how I feel about MST. I feel like 2 is kind of the ideal number with most of the floodgates gone. 1 copy of Book of Moon, because it's probably the best, one of the better staples you can run. 3 copies of Icarus Attack. Now, Icarus Attack is obviously one of the most powerful card in Blackwings. You tribute one monster and target 2 monsters in the field, destroy them. It's also nifty at dodging a lot of hateful back row. It's just a genuinely good card. I really always like Icarus Attack in any Winged Beast type deck at 3. 2 copies of Black Sonic. Now, when your opponent monster declares an attack with you control a Blackwing monster, and you banish all of them. It's a mirror force that banishes for Blackwings. It's pretty powerful. It's a bit more expensive last time I checked because it came out in the original Dragons of Legend. So it's not the cheapest card in the archetype, but nevertheless, I like it, running it, and Mirror Force, both kind of together. And 3 copies of Fiendish Chain. I noticed when I was looking at how expensive this card has gotten, it's gone up to like $8 a piece in a lot of places for the commons, and but I still really like Fiendish and Blackwings. You know, you don't have the biggest monsters in the world until you go into your, even when you go into your extra decks. So it's pretty important that you have those Fiendish chains for stopping monsters from attacking and going through. One copies of Vanity's Emptiness, because you can effectively function with Vanities on the field because of Clute. You can effectively, you know, it's the same thing with some Blackwing builds I've seen run Skill Drain for the same reason. 2 copies of Mirror Force, because, you know, I kind of always like the 2 Black Sonic, 2 Mirror Forces. I kind of like having the Mirror Force just in case. 1 copy of Ring of Destruction. Ring is probably the best form of spot removal currently in our format. It's obviously not as good as it used to be, but I think among the cards that got errated, it was probably the one that's the most playable currently. And then now for the side, 2 copies of Maxi and because, you know, especially this card I think has gone up quite a bit last time I checked, and the main reason is Norden. Maxi is pretty much I would consider a main deck staple as long as Norden is running around, because when you go instant fusion, your opponent will have to resolve their Norden play. It's not so they have to take that challenge, and you are going to, if you max C, you are going to draw 3 cards minimum when they try to Norden. So in that respect, I feel like max C is going to be a staple going forward in our format, because I don't think Norden's going to be everywhere, but if you have max C against Norden, it's going to net you at least 3 cards, which is pretty good for a max C. 2 copies of Effect Veiler. I feel like it's good to have that out for Trishula, out for those annoying effects we don't want resolving. I feel like Veiler's kind of relegated to the side at this point. 1 copy of Mystical Space, our 3rd copy of Mystical Space Typhoon for the Cliffort matchup. 2 copies of Spell Shattering Arrow. Main reason is there are lots of floodgates in my side deck, so I prefer to not have Shattering Arrows conflict with what else is in my side deck. And, you know, I do obviously, other than Emptiness, there's not a lot of floodgates, but 2 copies of Light Imprisoning Mirror, because we don't like Telenites. Theoretically, Telenites is probably one of this deck's worst matchups, because simply you can have all your Synchros on the board, and Trevor would be just like, nope, bounce them all. So it's really imperative that you have this card. And 2 copies of Delta Crow Anti-Reverse. If you don't know what this card does, it's sort of like a, if you control a Blackwing monster, destroy all face-down spell traps your opponent controls, and if you control 3, just like with Black Sonic, you can activate it from hand. The main reason you use this card is you side this card when your opponents, and you know their opponent's going to side some back row, and when they set all their back row past turn, you chain Delta Crow, and all their back row goes. So it's really nice. If you open with this, it can be nutty if you open this, if you side deck this and open with it against like a back row heavy deck. 2 copies of Mistake, because even though with the new support you do search a little bit more than you used to, the deck can function pretty well once you get your initial combo going. So I feel like Mistake, it's a pretty solid side deck card. 2 copies of Stygian Dirge. Same reason I was saying earlier. I feel like Stygian Dirge is a really good side deck card for Telenites, for a lot of any Exceed heavy deck. I feel like Dirge is probably an underrated side deck card, at least in my opinion. Now for the extra deck, for the Synchros, 2 copies of Blackwing Nothung the Elite. Nothung is probably one of my favorite Synchro monsters, because not only is a pseudo cowboy, but its attacker and defense reduction effect does not target, which means you can instantly get over Leo with this. And for Blackwings, it also gives you an additional normal summon to get search more stuff with your Black Whirlwind, which is really nice. 2 copies of Blackwing Tamer Obsidian Hawkjoe. Now this card has 2 effects. The first effect is that it can special summon a level 5 or higher Wing Beast monster from your graveyard. Most of the time, your typical combo is you go Nothung, special Orochi, then bring this guy out, then special summon it back. So you can also bring any of your other Blackwing Synchro backs as well. It's not restricted. It can also special summon itself, but I believe it's restricted. But it can also change. When your opponent attacks or activates an effect that targets only this card, you can change the targeting. So if they try to attack this card, you can target your other Blackwing monster, like Nothung, for example, and just bring it back next turn. So it's pretty nice in that regard. I really like that effect. It has 2 pretty good effects. And then I talked about this card a little while ago. I feel like 2 is kind of the best number. I don't think you really need more than the second one. You shouldn't need more than 2. Once you resolve 1 or 2, the second one, you probably have won the game at that point. 1 copy of Clearwing Synchro Dragon. Clearwing is probably one of the most powerful generic level 7s we've got in a long time. It's really good against Shaddolls because you can just smack it right into Construct and just get it off the field. It's incredibly good against the Shaddol matchup. and it's just a really good generic synchro monster. Like, I'm glad we're seeing more good generic synchro monsters, especially for the level 7 pool. One copy of Blackwing Armor Master. Armor Master is obviously not quite as good as it used to be, but nevertheless, I feel like I kind of like to have it. Just, I don't know, because reasons. I just like to have it. One copy of Castell. You can obviously run two because it is an Icarus attack target, but I still feel that like most of my decks, like Castell, both Castell and 101. Speaking of 101, when 101, because I've said in some previous videos, there's certain monsters that if I put back in my opponent's deck or put in the extra deck, they're just going to bring it right back out next turn. I'd rather take the monster and not give them that opportunity. And then one copy Evil Swarm Exciton Knight. You make this when you're down, I think at this point everyone knows why you play this card. And two copies of Ice Beast Seraphine. This is one of the most powerful cards in the Blackwing toolbox. Now, once per turn, you can detach and exceed material from this card, negate the effects of all face-up cards your opponent controls. If you do, this card gains 300 attack for each face-up card currently on the field except itself. So I really like this card against like decks such as Cliff Lords because not only will it negate their Scout and their Monolith that they've got in the Pendulum Zone and force them to have to bounce it with their Stealth or whatever, it also can be a pretty nifty way to get over towers depending on how many face-up cards are on the field. Remember, it does also count your own. So you can kind of spam the board a bit to buff it up to get enough to get over towers. You may not always be able to get big enough because it's not like Excalibur where it goes up to a certain amount. It gains 300 attack after the attack and defense loss. But I've always found Ice Beast to be one of the best cards in the whole Blackwing or any kind of Wing Beast type deck toolbox, and I've always found that I really like running two. One copy of number 80 Rhapsody and Berserk. I like this card in a lot of matchups, especially in the Necros matchup. It's really good because you can get rid of their stupid you can get rid of their ritual spells out of the graveyard. It's really good against Infernoids and decks like Infernoids and Lightsworns. I found that it really slows Infernoids and Lightsworns down. You can be surprised how much it slows them down just to banish two monsters from their graveyard. Then it can attack piggyback on one of your Exceed monsters. Really nice. And this is obviously a card most people have been waiting for over here in the TCG. Raid Raptor Force Tricks. This is one of the main cards that Raid Raptors really need to be consistent, but the main effect we care about is you can detach one Exceed material from this card and add one level 4 Darkwing Beast monster from your deck to your hand. So obviously great for Raid Raptors because it gives them the generic searcher that they've been missing. But for Blackwings, it also means we can search Bora, we can search Chris, we can search Shura, we can search Zephyros. It's not quite what we thought it would be, where it'd be like a King of the Pharaoh Imps for Wing Beasts, but it's still pretty dang good. It's really kind of giving just Blackwings a little bit. I'm hoping at some point in the future we do get Force Tricks over here in the TCG side, but until then, we have to just wait. And it's kind of sad because I feel it's kind of sad because Raid Raptors just won't ever be consistent enough without this card. But anyway, guys, I'd like to thank you guys for watching today. Really appreciate when you guys watch my videos. Tune in on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays for more Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you like what you saw from this video, please subscribe. Storm signing out.